Hello, I'm Chris.
Hello, I'm Charlie.
I'm your dad,
And I'm your son.
and we both love sports.
And sports betting.
And sports betting, Charlie, though you wouldn't think it, would you, from how we did in our first post? But anyway, no. What are your reflections on week one then?
Well, I think it's almost a good thing you bring up straight away so we can move past it quickly. We had a smashing start to the week, didn't we, with the Friday night game being Liverpool-Bournemouth. We needed over 2.5 goals and both teams to score. It was a 4-2, bit of a thriller, cash with ease. But other than that, it was slim pickings across the board. I think, we had, the over 2.5 goals double with Liverpool-Bournemouth, which won, and then we were a goal short in the Brighton-Fulham game, and that was doubly painful because we witnessed Fulham's late equaliser, stealing 3 points off us. Elsewhere, I know you're both teams to score, ACCA. It sounded so good on paper, but was far from it. I think there was a couple of games which both teams didn't score, so we were further away than we were close. Again, my goals treble of Victor Gyökeres, Chris Wood, João Pedro. Surprise, surprise, it was Chris Wood was the only one who scored of those three guys. And then into the EFL as well, we just had a bad beat on Crewe to beat Crawley. They did beat Crawley 1-0, but didn't score the 2 goals we needed. So I think that was a kind of recurring theme, slightly falling on the wrong side of things, but hopefully that's a sign that we're perhaps due some regression maybe this week. Would you think?
And there was a sort of inevitability about the first time we actually made this public that we would have a losing week, because just to set up some context to what we're doing here is we try and double our money each week by having some side bets on some sports events to sort of bring them to life for us a bit more. And we've been doing really well. We've been doing this for 3 months over the summer. We're still massively in credit, even though we've probably taken about a £70 loss, I would think, on the week, haven't we? But
not quite, about £60. So it's
£60.
It's recuperable, but obviously, like you say, I think for me it was the start of the Premier League season. My year, I always seem to get a little new lease of life. I wanted to start well, so it's frustrating that we couldn't. But as you say, we've been crushing it, I think, consistently for the last 3 months. So fingers crossed that evens out in the next couple of weeks. We hopefully see a winning week this week.
Okay, and I should say we skipped week 2 not because we were hiding, but just because we were busy doing other stuff. So with apologies for that, because we will try and do these weekly, not least because we're only a week away from the start of the NFL season. So I think over the course of the sort of autumn, late summer, autumn, we'll have a mixed bag of football, UK football, football, American, our football, and American football, NFL, and a sprinkling of other stuff. It's the Ryder Cup at the end of the month. But anyway, let's talk about week 3, Charles. What's on the menu this week? Have you got all football? What's catching your eye?
I think so. As I said, I wasn't, and we weren't miles off, hitting a lot of the bets. So I think it's kind of sensible to stick to what's been, what we've been looking at. I've watched a lot of football in the first 2 weeks. Obviously, you and I were at both of Brighton's games, so I think it's wise to include Brighton this weekend. I think again markets such as the goals markets, which we were fairly correct on, is something I go back to. So that's in fact where I'm going to start this weekend. Is 2 games similar to the approach of the over 2.5 goals that we had last time out, I should say, rather than last week. And I've gone for Manchester United at home to Burnley. And Tottenham Hotspur at home to Bournemouth, both games to have over 2.5 goals. And it's both for sort of differing reasons, I think. Tottenham have really impressed me so far in the first couple of weeks. Good signing, Mohamed Kudus. They brought in Palhinha, had a great result away at Manchester City last weekend. And they beat Burnley quite convincingly 3-0 at home on the opening day. And Bournemouth obviously were involved in our only winning bet of week 1. They scored 2 goals away at Anfield. So in my head, I've got kind of no issue with goals being involved in that game. And then Manchester United versus Burnley, of course, we caught the end last night of Manchester United's shock exit, should we say, to Grimsby. That's
disappointing exit. I'm not sure it was such a shock these days.
I know, but yeah, that's true. I think it was, it's testament to Grimsby. Obviously, we've probably watched Grimsby a couple of times the last few seasons, having watched Crawley. It's great to see, that David and Goliath scenario, and everyone who's not a United fan hates United. So that was a real good watch, especially seeing, £60 million Brian Mbeumo miss a penalty. But fingers crossed he can find the net this weekend, because we need them for over 2.5 goals. And I don't think in my head, maybe one of those goals are coming from the Burnley side, but I think this United team, they're a real low point. Again, how many times could you say that in the last 3-4 years?
Yeah.
So I think those are two games that have caught my eye for over 2.5 goals this weekend. Leaky defences, promising attacking options, and that double, £10 on that returns 25.
Okay.
Which I think is a decent price to get on that. Odds of 1.5 to 1 or plus 150 for any US viewers.
Okay. Well, there'll be a lot of platforms out there launching inquests into why Manchester United have started the season so poorly. So let's not go down that route. But Spurs, just briefly on this, Thomas Frank, I think, is a great manager. I mean, clearly he did a great job at Brentford. And I think it's just what that club needs, really, because he's everything that their owner isn't, or their chairman isn't. Daniel Levy is sort of cold, isn't he, and distant and calculating, whereas Thomas Frank, I think, has got a good touch with people, hasn't he? He comes across well.
I do. I think it's funny, actually, Thomas Frank. In my head, I was always sort of compared him to Graham Potter when he was at Brighton, and you see how the two's kind of trajectories, where Brentford, exactly. Thomas Frank, I think he there's no doubt he would have had options in the last 18 months, 2 years to go to United, Chelsea, perhaps. He's bided his time. I wouldn't have thought that going to Tottenham would have been the best move, considering how poorly Tottenham finished in the league last year. But it seems like a very good fit.
Well, I think they're pretty good. They brought in some good players, I think, and they've started well. I mean, we're only 2 games into the season, so it's early days yet. But we're recording this on the night of the Champions League draw, which has been interesting. But let's not get sucked into the TalkSport territory too much. Let's talk about Bet 2. So we've got a tenner for 25 on Bet 1, and Bet 2 is take it away.
Perfect. Well, I've just been talking about Tottenham, over 2.5 goals in their game. I'm going to include them in a 3-team to win accumulator. Or parlay, as we'd say. And it's funny you mentioned the European draw today, because this involves 3 European teams. I've taken Tottenham to win at home against Burnley, Nottingham Forest to beat West Ham, and Newcastle to win away at Leeds. I think that is perhaps the one I thought was a little bit of a touchy one. But Newcastle, I think their league position, I know it's only 2 games into the season, it doesn't tell the full tale. We watched the first half of their game against Aston Villa on the opening day. I thought they were fantastic. They should have got a point, if not more, against Liverpool on Monday night. They played over an hour with 10 men. And I think Leeds, they had the opening week, they beat Everton 1-0, bit of a dodgy penalty. They got spanked away at Arsenal in the week. In game week 2. So I think Newcastle, they can't go 3 games without getting a result, and this is the perfect spot to do so. As for Nottingham Forest, is there a worse club/team squad in the Premier League right now than West Ham? I think Forest, you mentioned the Europa League draw, that's tomorrow. They're going to find out who they're playing this year in the Europa League. Their squad's going to get that real big buzz, excitement, players playing for places. They've started well. They've got a good squad, kept most of their players. I know Nuno's a little bit unhappy, but this isn't necessarily about how good Nottingham Forest are, but I think it's about how poor West Ham are. And I think Forest should have no problem in getting a result there. And of course, Tottenham back at home have had a fairly easy start to the season. I know they won away at City, but first 2 home games being against Bournemouth and Burnley, I think that's quite nice, and I'm backing them to go 3 from 3, which would put them top of the league. And those 3 teams to win, what sort of odds do you think you'd be getting on those?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, it's interesting because I had one of the bets I was going to bring to the table was a six-fold teams to win, actually, which had got me very good odds, and it only includes two of the teams you've picked. I would think that is somewhere around 5-1.
It's bang on 5-1. So
Yeah.
I'm saying we take £5 on that, which would give us an overall return of £30. I think that's a decent price. Three big teams, European teams, pre-Europe. Yeah. You want to get your points in when you can. And I think the opposition they're all facing this weekend are weaker than those teams. I'll be interested. Why don't we go straight away? I noticed you sort of grimaced a little bit at my Newcastle selection.
Well, I just think, Leeds beat Everton. It wasn't a great game. Winning away at Leeds, I think that'd be a draw. Personally, that's why I haven't gone for that. I think I went for Chelsea to beat Fulham because I think Chelsea have started well, and I'm not sure Fulham have enough up top. And so I've got Manchester United to beat Burnley because I think they've got to win sometime. Spurs to beat Bournemouth, which you've gone for. Wolves to beat Everton because I think even though we were at the new Hill Dickinson stadium to see our boys get beat, we shouldn't have done. We should have got a point at the very least. In fact, we should have won that one. But I didn't think Everton were very good, and Wolves are good at home. Forest, I agree. I think to beat West Ham, and then I've gone Villa to beat Palace because Palace have played in Europe tonight. They're going to away. They're going to come back overnight into Friday. I guess have Friday off, go into training, and then travel on Saturday up to Villa. And Aston Villa have done nothing this week. So I think they'll turn over Palace on.
Sure, I would say Villa haven't looked overly impressive in the first couple of games. I think your key point there, and I think this goes for kind of all sport in general. It's something certainly to touch on when we come to the NFL season, but kind of identifying teams who are coming off shorter weeks and playing in Europe. That's represented in the NFL, in the NBA as well. It's almost kind of. Often we look at the team you're betting for, but in this instance, I think you're choosing to bet on Aston Villa because the team they're facing will perhaps be weakened. So I think that's a kind of good lesson for sports bettors out there. It's not necessarily you're betting on team A because of their quality, but you're looking at where team B is exposed, perhaps tired, injuries play a factor. So I think that's a real good case in point. And for out of interest, this six-fold accumulator, what odds are you getting on that? I've placed this bet. I've only put £2.50 stake on it to return £85. So they're generous odds. And the one thing I'd say just on that is, and this has been a bit of an insight from us having Jezza, your cousin, my nephew, playing at Crawley the last couple of years, is what you realise about footballers that they're creatures of habit and routine. And I think a lot of people, even football fans, can never understand this sort of cry of tiredness from footballers. And I think what it is that they like to have their routine. And for a team like Palace that haven't been in Europe before, sorry, I won't dwell on that because we've only been in Europe once. I think it's what are you used to, and even Villa latterly have been in Europe. The top clubs, they're used to that change of routine where they could travel midweek, come back, get their rest and relaxation in, and get prepped for it, irrespective of the squad size. Who plays on midweek and who plays on the Sunday. And I don't think Palace are that used to it. I'm sort of over-analysing this a little bit now. Nor do I think Palace have got the squad depth, frankly, that some of those other clubs have got. That's the only reason I say that. And also Villa have started poorly, let's face it. And all those teams, and I'll include, Brighton in that were under a little bit of pressure. And it's not the weekend you want to be entertaining City, really, as we are on Sunday. So anyway, I've already put some side money on that. If people want to join me, there's juicy odds on that six-fold to win. But let's go with the fivers for £30. And talking of Brighton versus City, I have got a little. I don't know if this is interesting for folks actually backing bet builders in the fixture featuring our team or not, but well, I think there's two things to note there. Often, and I think you and I don't fall victim to this very often. If anything, I sort of do the opposite. In that we obviously watch a lot of Brighton games, and we've got our ear to the ground with injury news, team news. That is obviously a big help. It's the same as any sort of sports journalist would be researching a team or a reporter. Betting on your team works when you're perhaps using it wisely, but if you're putting a lot of money on your team to win just because that's what you want to happen, can often be a recipe for disaster. And I think
I agree. That's a good point. And I think what if you watch a team regularly, you get attuned to the patterns of play, don't you? And how certain players behave and react against a type of opponent. So if one of our fullbacks, no names, is up against a quick winger, you might be inclined to take them for a yellow card because, and this is the point where I should just give you some kudos here, Charlie, because we were up at Everton on Sunday and you did have a bet which was for the three fullbacks, both the Everton fullbacks and both the Brighton fullbacks to get cards and one of the Everton fullbacks and midfielders to get a yellow card. Was it just that four-way?
Just four players for yellow cards.
For yellow cards.
I would always advise small stakes, but as you say, I had Maxim De Kuyper, Brighton left back, Mats Weaver, Brighton right back, James Garner, Everton's left back, who was playing out of position, and Idrissa Gueye, Everton's holding midfielder, all for yellow cards. And by the 65th minute, 3 of them had hit.
And what was that? Tell everyone what your stake was and what the
that was £2.50 bet for a return of £1,450. So that was
when that yellow card hit when it was Garner, I think, who got the yellow card in the 65th minute. Was it anyway? Whoever it was, I said to Charlie, I said, "What's the cash out?" And I said, if it's over 200, I thought it would be about £200. And I said, if it's over £200, you should take it. And it was 160, was it? I think
150, which I thought was a bit cheeky. But
it was a £2.50 stake, though.
It was, yeah. And I think in that sort of, I'm a bettor who kind of, I never cash out, or I rarely would unless there's a serious sort of kind of, incident where I know the bet's unlikely to win. But with about 30 minutes to go in the bet, in the game, and the bet, I suppose, I just thought that wasn't good enough. And I think in my head, as I said to you, if it's 200, 300, I'll probably take it. Turning £2.50 to 200 would be great. But I just thought, 30 minutes left, there's still time for a yellow card. Lo and behold, he didn't come through.
But the other 2 Everton midfielders did.
Criminal. It was just, it's almost as if it was mirrored our week 1 on this, how close I was, but one leg short. And, it was a fun one to track. As I said, £2.50 could have returned, almost 1.5. We didn't. But anyway, and I think, it kind of comes full circle, is that I knew, our 2 fullbacks would be kind of up against it. And I think maybe you and I might have thought about a similar route about backing one of those fullbacks again for a yellow card, some fouls perhaps this weekend.
Well, I'll just come to that now. Just for the record, for those out there, if you've got a £2.50 stake, my philosophy is, and that's turned into £150, then you cash out. I'm not as macho as Charlie is about this. Never cash out. Stay the course, but it's all about multipliers. I have gone for, well, shall I talk you through this? This is what have we got here? This is a 70 to 1 7-leg bet builder, because it's all on the same game. And I have taken 2 players to score or assist, 1 on each side. I've taken 2 players to be booked, 1 on each side. And I've taken 2 players to have 1+ shots on both sides. And I've taken over 2 goals in the game. So I need 3 goals in the game. Clearly, that's a
you need a miracle is what you need with that to happen. That sounds like,
well, we say it, but I'm now, because these aren't just punts. I think that we post on this. There is some method to our madness.
Yeah. Well, talk me through it, and I'll see if I think it is madness.
Well, we haven't got an all singing, all dancing algorithm, but we do look at the stats and the form, and so Phil Foden, he is our bet noir when it comes to City. He scores against us and is integral to the result 9 times out of 10. In fact, I was reading today that he scored more times against us. It's only one clay team he scored more goals against in this time. So I've got Phil Foden to score or assist.
I'll also say I feel like he only exclusively scores when we're at home as well.
Yeah,
he
that's
never
true.
seems to score at City. He's always scoring the Amex.
He's very good playing away. I have got Kaoru Mitoma to score or assist. And that is because I think we'll score a goal. And generally, when we score a goal, Kerem Matoma is involved in that goal because he's a brilliant player. And I think he really shines against the top 6 clubs when we play the top clubs. It's not a vanity thing. I think he sort of rises to the challenge. So those are my 2 punts to score assist. Cards, I've got Carlos Baleba to get a yellow card because we're going to be up against it in midfield, and Baleba gets caught out. He's a great player. We love him, and we're glad he stayed. But he is prone to getting caught out of position.
Little cynical tug of the shirt or something.
Tug of the shirt, yeah. And City have got someone who I think sort of is in that same mold, but plays further back, which is Ruben Diaz. And so I'm taking Baleba and Diaz to get yellow cards in the game. I'm taking Yankuba Minte to have 1+ shot. Doesn't have to be on target, just has to be a shot. And I'm taking Reinders to have a shot too, because I think he's proven that he's quite an
very good player. He really impressed me in the 90 minutes I watched him play against Wolves. So I think it's a great signing.
Absolutely. And I'm taking the 3 goals in the game, minimum of over 2 goals, because I think there will be goals in this game. I think we might only score 1, but I suspect City might score 2. But we live in hope. We beat them last season at the Amex. We got a point up at Etihad. Looking forward to it. We kind of need to get some points on the board. We haven't started very well. So that's turned out quite a long odds thing. And I've only staked £2.50 on that, but that would return, a winning bet would return £177.50. So, and there's a lot of variables there, but what do you think?
I think that's again, like you say, it's not a Hail Mary or by any means, as you said, a punt. There's justified reasoning behind each pick. I think they all make sense. Obviously, it's big odds for a reason, but you're asking, 2 players that probably will commit a lot of tackles and fouls to, get a yellow card. You're asking of the 2 kind of most attacking players on each team to be involved in a goal. So I think it's definitely worth, the token £2.50. I would obviously generally advise, stakes less than £5 on anything sort of 25 to 1 and upwards, which I think is sensible. But you may be prone to the 1 leg miss like I had on my big one at the weekend. But I'm very happy to do it. It's interesting to see kind of you talk through the game and what you think is going to happen. Despite Brighton perhaps losing, even though we need a result, but how that will pan out with Foden and Mitoma, obviously. Because your bet kind of not necessarily covers the result either, I would say, which is
no, and I'm generally. I mean, I will do both teams to score before I'll do a win. Having said that, you've picked 3 teams to win. I picked 6 teams to win. But yeah, I think it's sort of hedging your bets a little bit more. And also, as we've said before, we tend to go for markets where they stay alive through the course of the game. So we're less likely to pick first goal scorer, for example, because particularly if a bet builder or a parlay, a multi-leg bet, if your person isn't the first goal scorer, then it kills that bet dead, doesn't it? It's sort of dead in the water.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than having a 5-6 legger when it falls at the first. So yeah, I mean, I've tried to read it, but who knows? I mean, I think it was interesting. We watched the Brighton Carabao game yesterday, and it was interesting. You said something when who is it that came on?
Simas.
When Simas came on, and you said, "Oh God, he's 7-1 or 8-1 to score," and there was still 20 minutes left, I think, weren't there? We were 4-0 up, maybe, or 3-0 up.
Yeah.
And so you backed it, didn't you? And I said, what made you go for that? And you said, the odds, really. It wasn't necessarily that you
I think, that was a case in point of, that it's so tough to do, obviously, and we're not at the stage yet to be able to do in-play betting or offer in-play betting advice. But if you were sat at home watching a game on the telly, look, I wouldn't necessarily advise you to bet on every game, but it's worth a look because often, bookies can be wrong in their mispricing, or you might disagree. In my head, when I saw that we were bringing him on, I was thinking 3 or 4 to 1 would be a good price for him to score. As you said, about 25 minutes left in the game, 3-0 up, lower league opposition. Yeah. When I saw 7 to 1, I jumped at it, and and I only put, there's only £10 on the bet for an £80 return, but it wasn't. I'm not breaking the bank there, but I think that was a case in point where, my knowledge of Brighton and knowing this, he's a striker, he's going to come on, it's his debut, he's going to be greedy for the goal. And it took him up less than 5 minutes. I think he scored twice, I should say.
Scored twice, yeah.
So I think, again, it's a good point. I'm not kind of advising when you go to a game that you should be out with your phone here saying, oh, quick, I'm seeing that so-and-so's coming on. What's his odds for a goal? But certainly in-play betting in football, when a player might have made 3 or 4 fouls, maybe look at their odds for a yellow. If they're generous, sprinkle some money on it. Same again, if a team's pressing for a goal, you might think that, to back them to score the next goal. So I think that's a real kind of, good point. Like, I'm glad you bring it up, almost, especially because it makes me look good.
Well, it's interesting because I think generally, the bookies get it right, don't they? The odds, there's a reason they make so much money. But occasionally they'll misprice an outcome, and it's just being alive to that. Incidentally, I think in due course, I'd love to think that we might be able to do an in-game pod, where we can, and in some ways it might be easiest for us to do a Brighton game. So it has to be an away game, yes. So we're not going to against a big team, because I think it would be interesting interesting experience to be with you during a game where you've got one eye on the odds, because you are canny.
Yeah, for sure, and you've got to be quick, on these things, because it's like the stock market. Stuff changes, second to second, and they close it, suspend the market, so you won't be able to lay any money down. So. I think that's a good tip, especially if you're watching games. And as we say, the reason we're doing this is to add a little bit of more excitement into sport we're already watching. That is a perfect way to do it. If you're, watching Super Sunday, or, you're watching the golf, rugby, cricket, have a look. You don't have to put anything on, but by all means, if there's something that you think is mispriced or you think is generous, then why not take advantage of it? Because betting in play is just as profitable as betting pre-game.
And I think, the one thing I'd say also is, if you're playing small odds, if you're betting £1 here or 250 there, the fun is getting one over on the bookies. If you put £2.50 on a 7-1, you're still, okay, it's only £15, but or £20, but it's 10 times what you had. That's
exactly
that's the philosophy. And when you win a bet, I think it's tempting to say, oh, I should have put 50 on it, or 100, or I should have put £1,000 on it. But that's not, that's not the way to think, is it? It's
not at all. It's still successful. Like I said, I put £10 on Simas to score last night. I wasn't the thing I was most happy about was the fact that I'd clocked that, he was our striker coming on and he scored, rather than, oh, great, I've got, £80 now. I know that might come across as a little sort of narrow-minded, but the fact for me, I was very happy with myself that I could have recognised that there was a kind of mispriced there. Striker, it seemed like I knew ball there. I know it sounds bleeding obvious. You're back in the striker to score when you're 3-0 up already with half an hour to go.
He's a kid. Is he 18? He might be just 19. But
but he's going to be special.
Well, he's a player, isn't he?
He's going to be good. Yeah.
And he's not even our good Greek striker. Anyway,
but circling back to, I've actually built a little bet builder, not as kind of attractive odds as your one for the Brighton Man City game, but as you said, I think I'm seeing kind of the Brighton games well in the opening couple of weeks, especially with the winner last night and so close to one on Sunday at Everton. I've got a little more different approach, bit more conservative, I think, with my markets. I've gone with both teams to score in the game. Obviously, it happened in both games for us last season. 2-2 away, we won 2-1 at home. I've gone for 4 corners each team. I think this is 2 very attacking teams. You've seen how high we press and the speed of our counter attack. City, speaks for themselves. They've had 4 corners in both their games so far. One of them being away at Wolves, where they dominated. Another game where they were behind. So it's a good sample to see how City play when they lose and how City play when they win. And then I've gone with both teams to receive a card. So that's just 1+ card. Can be any player from either team. And you're getting odds of just over 3-1 on that, 16-5, which I thought was a nice price. And I think not too much to offer because at bare minimum, I'm needing both teams to score, 8 corners in the game and 2 cards in the game, as long as they're for the right team.
And just what do you think is your least likely to hit of those 3 legs?
It's strange. It's not reflected in the odds, but I think both teams to score. I think and when I say that, I don't really have any doubts that Man City will score because we've conceded in both our games. I think if we score a goal, and that sounds, people might be thinking, I'm such a pessimist. You're not backing your own team to score at home. But if anything in that, I'm thinking they could come and beat us 3-0.
Yeah. Well, they went and beat Wolves 4-0, didn't they?
They did, yeah. But I think we're always good for a goal. We were very, very unlucky not to score at Everton. And as you said, we could have scored twice, 3 times, missed a penalty, in fact. Yeah. And even against Fulham, I think we were wasteful in front of goal. And we haven't had a problem creating chances. It's just putting them in the net. So I think even though, like I said, both teams to score isn't the kind of shortest, longest odds leg of that bet builder, it's the one that I think is a little bit tetchy, perhaps. So.
Yeah, scoring goals. Again, I was reading today, Brighton's XG is the 2nd highest, I think, or in terms of we've only scored 1 goal this season, but our XG is 2.8 or something ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it's 2.8 alone in the Everton game.
Oh, was it? All right.
And obviously that's skewed because we've had 2 penalties, and for those of you who don't know out there, a penalty accounts for 0.7 expected goals, so it's a very high,
all right, I didn't know that.
Chance of scoring, obviously, and Welbeck's penalty would, we can breeze past that because it was a shocking penalty.
Love you, Danny.
But yeah, but I think, like I said, it should be a good game. I'm excited. We're going. I think I'm sort of feeling there's a little less pressure on the team than what you're piling on. I don't think we want to go 3 games without a win, but it is Man City at home. A game I'd say we're not expected to win, but but we'll see.
How much are you putting on the odds of 16-5 then? Is this a tenner bet? Is it?
I'd like a tenner on that. Yeah, 3-1. Just so £10 on that returns 42.
Okay.
And we'll be there to cheer. A few other things I kind of looked at this weekend. I think that there's maybe, we should perhaps spend a couple of minutes just talking through some of the things that maybe didn't quite make the bets this weekend. Obviously,
modeling under.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you've got any more bets, but I'll just touch on Liverpool Arsenal as the game of the weekend, undoubtedly. And we haven't covered anything in that game. And I think perhaps for me, that's a sign that I don't really know which way that one's going.
Yeah, I don't know either, really. It's a shame for that game to come so early in the season, in a way, because it's not like it's the old firm where they get to play each other 3-4 times a season, but it's home and away. I what I say about these big games is when in doubt, it's a 1-1 draw, isn't it? And
exactly. I think both teams would be happy with that, probably.
Yeah, maybe. I think, Liverpool, again, when we do this, I'm aware that every other platform out there will be talking about Liverpool and Arsenal and all the top teams. And that's maybe, the top team supporters will want that. And maybe they want us to talk about Liverpool and Arsenal. But I don't think Liverpool are particularly firing, but they played 2-1-2. And,
for sure.
They found a way to do it. Arsenal, I mean, their recruitment's scary, really. I'm a massive Gyökeres fan, and now they've picked up Eze. Who I guess will play. I don't know who he's going to play for, but in place of, I know he's going to play for Arsenal. But I don't know. Hard to predict. I'll look at it.
Yeah, well, I'll just rattle through this. There were 3 other kind of selections which didn't make kind of our official plays this week or weren't sort of justified, in my opinion. I think Bristol City, Hull in the Championship, both teams have started absolutely flying, seeing a lot of goals in their games. I'd maybe lean towards both teams to score / the over 2.5 goals market in that one. funny you should mention the Old Firm. It's the first Old Firm of the season this year. At Ibrox as well. So Rangers have started poorly. Celtic have started well in the league, have just been knocked out of the Champions League, as the Rangers actually. So I'd lean kind of cards, goals there as well. Old Firm it always seems to throw up cards. Given that away fans are back now at those games, and I think it makes sense to go there. And I was also looking at MK Dons at home to Walsall this weekend. Their double money price it evens to win at home. Kind of remarkably, you and I went down to watch MK Dons in between filming these podcasts, didn't we?
Yeah, we went to watch Crawley, really, but they were playing MK Dons.
They were, yeah. And MK Dons have had 2 wins before that, got stumped by Crawley that night. But I think they're a nice bet for this weekend if you're having a bet on the lower league football, perhaps.
Who have Crawley got this weekend?
Crawley Town. They're away at Chesterfield.
All right.
Who, as you could probably expect, Crawley with a really, really rough start. They're just shy of 5-1.
Crawley are?
Yeah.
To win?
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, I might have a look at that. Where are Chesterfield in the league? How have they started?
That's a good question, to be fair.
Chesterfield.
Absolutely flying. Played 5, won 4, lost 1.
All right.
So maybe not, it's third bottom against second.
All right.
So, and that's perhaps, but Crawley got to win. They've got to win sometime, don't they? They can't.
Yeah, they've got a striker problem, a bit like Brighton. A dearth of strikers. But there you go. That's not.
They do. And I think it would be naive, or perhaps I'd be doing a disservice to myself if we didn't mention we're only 1 week away from the return of the NFL, which I'm desperately excited to share some tips and content. With kind of viewers, with you certainly.
Yeah, because the NFL, you spent a lot of time, haven't you, looking at the markets in the NFL?
I do, and we've mentioned in previous kind of podcasts. I think perhaps we touched on it last time. And NFL is a great sport to bet on because it's all about repeatable patterns and structure, statistics, formations, certain plays, which are all filmed, available to access, and like I said, repeatable. So trends and patterns, streaks seem to occur quite commonly in the NFL, and obviously it's such a finite amount of games because each team only plays 17 games. The quality is going to be top notch throughout the season. So I'm excited. We're only a week away from first game of the season, which is Cowboys-Eagles on Thursday night. For a bumper week 1 schedule next weekend. I just wonder if you've been keeping your eye into the NFL at all, or you've got a little sneaky Super Bowl pick for me, or
well, not yet. No, I mean I like a bit of NFL, as you know. I don't have a particular team. I've won money on the Super Bowl in the past, but when I was a younger man, I used to spend my summers in the States, and I would see the early season games, and then I'd come back to the UK and stake some money after 3 or 4 games of the season. I remember I won big on the Raiders one year in the 80s, and then the Cowboys in the 90s. No, I mean I'm looking forward to the season. Maybe next week we should do what we did a little bit on the week 1 of this. Do a sort of week 1 picks, but also maybe do a futures thing and try and pick out some season long bets for those people that and if people aren't necessarily into the NFL, we can recommend it, if only for the odds on offer. So
for sure, it's certainly fun to offer. And futures, we mentioned a couple football futures, which obviously you're betting on them in August, and they're not going to win until May. With the NFL, you're betting on them in September, and you'll know if they've won by December, January. So it's not, you don't have to wait as long for your investment. Should it win?
Okay. I'll look forward to that. And so I'll do a bit of homework. We'll have a look at it. I'm sure you're already doing your homework. So next week, a bit of a mixed fare of 2 types of football, American and football. Global. And in the meantime, let's keep our fingers crossed for a better week this week and see if we can't double our money, as it says on the
sure. Field. Well, to be fair, if one of your big boys hits this weekend, then we're going to be fine regardless. So I'm banking on Foden to score in a 4-1 Brighton win, Carew scoring all 4 would be fantastic.
It would be lovely. I think it's more likely to be you with your steady Eddie 10s into 25s that might turn us a profit.
Perhaps, anyway, yeah.
I look forward to that,
we'll
and I can't wait to see it on Sunday for the game.
Exciting. Fingers crossed.
International break after that, we should maybe look at the international scene as well. But anyway, as so much sport coming our way, with the Ryder Cup just 3 weeks away. 4 weeks away, whatever it is. Can't wait. Okay, Chuck. Well, listen, nice to see you.
Likewise, nice to chat.
Thanks for the insights. Fingers
crossed for a better week. It can't get much worse anyway. So the only way is up. Right. And I'll see you next week.
See you later. Look forward to it. Take care, mate.
Incredible!